Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Toronto Debating Society for Tuesday, February the 19th. Our motion for this evening is assisted suicide should be legalized in Canada. Tonight's debate is a cross-examination debate, and I would like to call upon Adrian as our Prime Minister to start off for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. The resolution before the House today is assisted suicide should be legalized in Canada. The government is defining the resolution as follows. Assisted suicide is defined as suicide aided by the help of more than one physician, and should be legalized in Canada is defined as should no longer be a crime under the Canada Criminal Code. The government has three arguments or three main points in favor of the resolution. Point number one is it will provide a clear legal framework for end-of-life care. Point number two is it will remove the discrimination regarding end-of-life care. And point number three is that it will help individual freedom expand and grow. The first point, making physician-assisted suicide legal will provide a framework in which it can be monitored, tracked, and regulated. There are cases of doctors, patients, and family members huddling in hospital corridors, conspiring to withhold medical care in order to get the same result as assisted suicide with a physician. According to the American Hospital Association, in 1997, 70% of deaths happen after a decision is made to withhold treatment. Even the act of sending a patient home can be a death sentence, as there is no care available as there's no care like hospital care to manage potential life-ending emergencies, like fever, intense pain, dehydration, poor respiration, etc. But according to an ethicist at the University of Utah, Dr. Batten, how many people or how many patients and family members really understand what this decision entails? Do they understand that a morphine drip will shorten a patient's life, for example? The Netherlands, Belgium, the state of Oregon all have physician-assisted suicide laws. They are all well managed. They all have more than one physician required to make the decision to give them medication or an injection to end their life. It provides a check and balance, so to speak. We are able to gather statistics and able to make sure that things are going as they should be going, and that people and patients are dying in a humane way, in a peaceful way, as opposed to having their lives linger when they don't want their lives to linger. The second point removes discriminations regarding end-of-life care. If you're, to use a phrase, lucky to have a disease which will kill you quickly, you get to choose the manner of your death by withholding treatment. You get to sign a DNR order. If you happen to have a disease like Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's, Parkinson's, for example, where you may not have that ability, you don't have that choice. You don't have that option. Physician-assisted suicide removes that discrimination, removes that imbalance. Suicide in Canada is not a crime. It hasn't been a crime since 1972. And according to the British Columbia Supreme Court, June of 2012, to punish a physician for assisting you to commit suicide is discriminatory. It means you're being treated unfairly because of your disability. You're being discriminated by law because of your disability, because of the fact that you can't do something on your own, which is perfectly legal to do for someone who has their own means to take their own life, for example. And this was in 2012, the British Columbia Supreme Court. And the third point, individual freedoms and liberties, and how physician-assisted suicide gives you more options and it gives you more choice, so to speak. Permitting physician-assisted suicide is a continuation and strengthening of these liberties and freedoms, especially when it concerns freedoms to do what we want with our own bodies regarding care, or lack thereof. In the Queen versus Henry Morgentaler, concerning abortion, and cited in this case, Mr. Justice Sapinko wrote, "The security of a person encompasses a notion of personal autonomy, involving at the very least control over one's bodily integrity, free from state interference and free from state-imposed psychological and emotional stress. For all of these reasons, we beg the House to support the government in allowing this resolution to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I would now like to ask Astrida, as the Leader of the Opposition, to come and cross-examine the Prime Minister for 2 minutes.
Is it not the change in the structure of the colleges of physicians and surgeons and how the nurses are trained and the hospital and health center staff and their ability to get through legalized suicide more important than a legal framework in Canada?
I would disagree. I would say that not having a legal framework makes it easier for patients to commit suicide without their consent. I mean, under the current practice, a doctor can send you home. They can give you more morphine. They can change your treatment, and that effect may hasten your death, whatever. But as a patient, you don't have that option. If things are more out in the open, I think it'll be a breath of fresh air.
What is your source? Government database statistics?
You did ask me the question, let me answer it.
Yeah.
I believe that there will be an ability to make it a normal thing, to make it a routine thing, and as it becomes routine, it'll become more out in the open, it'll become regular.
I'm looking for statistics, for instance, and how are American statistics applicable to Canada when we have such different structures?
I believe that while America is a different country, it is not that different in terms of these sort of statistics, as well as the fact that because legalized suicide or physician-assisted suicide has taken place there, and it hasn't really taken place here at all, there's no real comparison.
Do you have the statistics on the number of people who've been assisted?
In Oregon, for example, between 1998 and 2011,
what is your source? What is your
596
But who is your
patients.
source? Is it
One moment.
no, I'd like to know your source. Actually,
I'll give you the stats first, and then you'll get your source after. 596 patients used.
And the source was?
You never hear this. In the bar.
Members of Parliament, the Leader of the House did not provide us with any government statistics. What was his source? Google or some other search engine? We need the federal statistics and the state statistics. Same applies to Netherlands and Belgium. If we're going to benchmark other countries or states before we make such a significant change to our own country. If we allow dying to be a humane way of ending life, will we not in the future then have a familial pattern, common law, hereditary with respect to suicide? In other words, someone's parent committed suicide, well then it's a given fact and that one of the offspring and one of the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and future generations should commit suicide. That doesn't eliminate the problem. Education eliminates the problem. And that's why our government currently has hospitals and health centers and psychiatric facilities, helplines, to assist these people who have problems. And that's my first argument, that it does not need to be legalized because Canada already has a structure in place.
Here, here.
By virtue of these existing institutions. And they will ensure that the person becomes educated based on treatment plans and assessment orders which our regulated health professionals, which includes physicians, are trained intimately in through universities and internship. It is legally wrong in Canada, this is my second argument, to assist someone in suicide. It's covered off by a number of sections in the Criminal Code, Section 220, 228, 224, 247, 225. Influence on the mind is 228. Preventable death, act or omission, is Criminal Code Section 224. Death is not the answer. Education is the answer. That's my third argument. If someone wants to commit suicide, they should fall into three categories. They're either physically disabled, they are mentally disabled, they have a mental health problem, or they're geriatric. In other words, they're hopeless. Their life is unhappy. Well, with a physical ailment, and education and treatment, they could lead a healthier life. Even to the point that familial pattern would not reoccur. And we could once again move into spending government resources in a more effective manner. With a mental disorder, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual Mental Disorders, which psychiatrists follow in Canada, has a treatment manual in place. So there is no need to change that. And the geriatric, once again, we can help them via education, the current structure that is in place. And finally, legalized suicide doesn't need to be legislated into place, when actually you could also say, based on the millions of patents in existence in Canada, it already does exist. By virtue of the fact that the patents affect the longevity of human life on Earth. So it's every option is already available to us as Canadians, and there's no need for change. So please do not vote for the motion.
Here, here.
Thank you, Astrida. I would now like to ask Dean, the member of the government, to come up and cross-examine for 2 minutes.
You've stated, I just want to make sure, you stated on one hand that it's legally wrong to assist someone to commit suicide in Canada. And yet, you also have just stated that legalized suicide doesn't have to be enacted as it's already there. So I'm not sure which legalized suicide you're talking about. Doctor-assisted, patient-assisted, somebody else assisted? I'm confused. When is it legal and when is it not? And why is it okay that we don't have to enact this legislation?
It should be legalized because, as I stated, the government has a number of institutions and professions licensed to deal with the problems that the population faces on an ongoing basis, and some of those problems have been in existence for thousands of years.
So the fact that most people that commit suicide are perhaps mentally disabled or mentally ill, despite the fact there are treatment plans and they had to put the luminous veil on the Don Valley Bridge to prevent people from jumping, that would suggest that the treatment plans in place don't work.
I searched the Health Canada website and Statistics Canada website, not the media. You just quoted the media stories. I didn't find any statistics with respect to the number of suicides. And Health Canada can shut down the media. Health Canada can control the corporations and they regulate health professionals, so then we should stick to Health Canada's and Canadian statistics as our source of information versus the media that's so wishy-washy, up and down.
Here, here.
There we are. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I let her go on because even at the end of it all, it's still not clear to me, and it shouldn't be clear to you, what the opposition side is as regards the government management of mental health and suicide prevention with regards to any reports that they have cited. Ladies and gentlemen, let us go back to the question at the heart of this argument and whether or not assisted suicide should be legalized. The Prime Minister has already stated that, one, it should be legalized because then it is controlled, and it is clearly controlled through standards, through accepted standards by the medical profession, the legal profession, politicians, the public at large, as far as what is good for all. In 2001, December 13th, Forum Research polled 1,160 adults, and 67% of them favored legalizing physician-assisted suicide of terminally ill patients. In addition, the Royal Society of Canada, bioethicists from that august board, actually recommended it in November 2011 that the criminal code be amended to allow assisted suicide, as the Prime Minister has stated is already the case in countries like Netherlands, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the state of Oregon. And I'd like to bring up the case in point because the questioner of the Prime Minister said, where are your sources for 500 and people? Well, in fact, it's the Oregon Public Health Division report that provides that information. They've been tracking it since it was legalized in 1997, ladies and gentlemen. And in fact, those people who, some have private insurance, public insurance, no insurance, none. And what they said was, for end-of-life care, we would like the option to end our lives. And the reasons they did, and this is important, it's the social reasons, not the legal ones, losing autonomy, less able to engage in activities that are enjoyable, loss of dignity, loss of control of bodily functions, burden on the family and caregivers, financial implications, things that nobody thinks about when they're 20, unless they happen to have a terminal cancer situation. But ladies and gentlemen, when you are in that situation, these things come to the forefront of your mind. And if you are stuck, unable to end your pain, end your suffering, end the suffering of your family members who are trying to care for you, are financially in ruin because they can't, in the States, afford the health care that is required, ladies and gentlemen, a well-thought-out doctor-assisted suicide may be what the patient desires to ensure a good outcome for all. Now, we are not saying back alley euthanasia or weird stuff going on. We're talking in a hospital, 2 doctors approved, psychiatrists or psychoanalysts checking the mental state of the patient to ensure the decision is being made soundly. And in BC, again, the Supreme Court, Gloria Taylor, who had Lou Gehrig's disease, argued, as did Sue Rodriguez years ago, that she should be given the choice to end her life when she chooses. Now, the doctor does not do the life ending. The doctor sets up whatever it is, the injection, the pills, and in Oregon, they have been doing this. And the doctors ensure that the facilities are available. Not everybody does it. Of the people who have requested, not all have taken their own life. Things change, but that's their choice. Maybe their health got better. Maybe something in their family life changed. But consistently, people have taken advantage of that since 1997 in Oregon. And the reason we're using Oregon is because, one, it's not legal in Canada, and two, it's a good thing to look at other countries and see what their statistics show, what their public opinion is, their political and legal implications are, before we go through the morass of not being informed. And this is the purpose of this debate tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is to be informed. Many of the people in Oregon had cancer, painful cancer, and they didn't want to suffer. So, ladies and gentlemen, we believe we should give people that choice. As people live longer, the likelihood of that happening is going to be greater. Please support the motion.
Thank you very much, Dean. I would now like to call on the member of the opposition to come up and cross-examine the member of the government for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable member of the government. You came up with some good ones there. You said in certain situations it may be what the patient desires. What happens if it's not what the patient desires?
Then you would ask the patient what they desire.
And if they said no?
Then obviously you would not.
Oh, obviously.
Because their desire is no.
Obviously? Are you sure that obviously is an issue here where some people may be confused or may be pressured into being euthanized?
Well, euthanized and assisted suicide are two different things. Assisted suicide, the suicide
No, that's not what I was asking actually. But let me move on. Let me move on here.
Yes, you should.
Is
Losing the point. Yes.
I don't think so. You just don't understand the concepts here. Is the guiding principle of medical ethics to do no harm?
The Hippocratic Oath says to do no harm.
And so these people that would be doing this euthanizing would be not the Hippocratic Oath persuasion?
The assisted suicide assisting doctors who have chatted with the patient or dealt with paperwork provided by said patient beforehand would be doing what is in the best interest.
Oh, so it's an
of the patient.
executioner. I get the idea. Now, can you tell me, sir, is it the government's responsibility to protect all its citizens?
To protect all its
To
citizens?
protect all its citizens, yes. Do you want me to rephrase that?
No, to protect the rights of all of its citizens.
Oh, okay. And is it?
Yes.
And I would assume that the right would be to stay alive if they wanted to be. Can you tell me? I have a question here. What would be the cutoff for this type of euthanizing request? Would people with Alzheimer's qualify?
That would be discussed when we prepared.
With cancer, would they qualify, or schizophrenics?
Schizophrenics
People who are drunk or
likely not.
depressed?
Likely not if they were not analyzed
The Prime Minister brought up the point. The Prime Minister brought up, thank you, sir. The Prime Minister brought up a very interesting point where he said, we don't want to discriminate. Well, as I was just about to ask the Secretary of the government, well, it's all very well about discriminating with healthcare workers or healthcare professionals. What is there in the government's argument if that's turned around to discriminate against the particular people who have a reason to be euthanized or to have assisted suicide? What happens if a teenager with spots is so depressed he wants to end his life? Is that the sort of discrimination that would be allowed? I don't think that the government would allow that. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is the crux of the opposition's arguments, because what is it that will stop some people from being allowed to commit suicide if they're just depressed, or they feel that they can't hold on to life anymore and just don't want to put up with it anymore? Ladies and gentlemen, we know all about some people out there, a tiny fraction of society, who have to put up with dreadful pain, incurable diseases, and so on. And our heart goes out to them. That's on the opposition. But, ladies and gentlemen, it is always bad policy to make laws based around what few people need. It is what the government is there for, to make laws that encompass everyone. And everyone should be included in this kind of law. Having two people out there to say this is okay, that's all well and good. But this can be abused. And to make laws that allow for this type of thing would not be necessarily good, and probably with the government's doing the setting up of this legal framework would actually make things worse. So, as our first point, it is also morally unacceptable to ask anyone to euthanize or to actually kill someone. So the argument about euthanizing people the small segment of society, it is not morally right to do this. And of course, the old hot potato, who is it that's going to be euthanized or to have this assisted suicide process inflicted on them? A lot of people who may not want to be euthanized. What about the vulnerable people that are out there? The old people that don't necessarily want to go, but their family is pressuring them into it, and they find two happy doctors that will sign these certificates. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot of leeway here where things can go wrong, and it's up to the government to make sure these things are kept in place, and people who are vulnerable are not just thrown out of society because it suits the family or because it suits certain people. I would like to come to one of the Prime Minister's points. He mentioned abortion, and he cited the Morgentaler decision. And it's the legal framework of Canada does not actually say, yes, you can do this. The legal framework says there is no abortion laws. There's a very subtle difference that obviously the government hasn't come to terms with. So what I'm saying here, ladies and gentlemen, there isn't a pro-euthanizing law here, and things seem to work apart from a few people, and there's always going to be a few people in society that are left out. So, ladies and gentlemen, the laws that are out there right now appear to work. The Prime Minister brought up a whole pile of things with the do not resuscitate. Yes, there is a way right now. There is a procedure. As the Prime Minister pointed out, he said you can just give them more morphine. Is that assisted suicide? It's not legal now, but it's not illegal. This is a process whereby people who want to die, or people who are dying anyway, can be put to sleep. They can rest. So, ladies and gentlemen, to finalise, the government has put forward a lot of points that say, wouldn't this be great? Yes, it would be great for a minority of people, a tiny minority, but the other side of that is, who will it benefit? Will it make matters worse? Things are working as they are right now, and we urge you to vote against this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. I would like to call on Adrian to come up and cross-examine the member of the opposition for 2 minutes. And
member of the opposition, you said that things are working right now. Does not the fact that doctors, nurses, and anyone who has anyone in a health field care who has access to a syringe can hasten people's death because they think they need it, and no one knows about it because no consent is given, no discussion has been made, no records are being kept, and things are just happening willy-nilly? Is that what you call things working just fine?
I'm sorry, I don't consider someone being allowed to die willy-nilly. This is obviously something that
you said that things were working right. Are they or are they not working right? I mean, yes or no?
Is the current system working as it is? It seems to be, without assisted suicide.
It seems to be, so it may seem not to be. That's what the government thinks, that it seems not to be working.
I thought that I'd actually explain why it is working right.
Well, it really isn't working. The next question: are you aware that in Oregon, a psychiatrist's opinion is required before a physician-assisted suicide takes place?
Actually, you dealt with a lot of the US side of things. Surely the cultural aspects of the US and the fact that...
Well, it is
people
hard-
need- Well, no, let me finish. You actually told the leader of the opposition that you needed to finish, and I was asked a question. So in the situation where in the States where medical care is incredibly expensive, the whole process based around the society is totally different from a caring environment like Canada, where
Thank you very much, member of the opposition. Is it not advisable to take opinions from other countries before we try this on our own and use the statistics that are available?
Other countries, but there's only one state that you mentioned, that was Oregon.
We
That's not
mentioned
a whole country.
we mentioned Oregon, we mentioned Switzerland, we mentioned Belgium.
The
The member.
statistics that you brought up were based around the U.S. The statistics that you cited were Oregon, which is the
I
US.
can bring stats into the from Netherlands as well. Thank you very much. My apologies.
Thank you, Adrian. So that ends the formal part of the debate. We're going to move on to the summation. So I would like to call on the Leader of the Opposition, Astrida, to speak for 2 minutes.
In closing, I'd just like to remind the House that, yes, assurance can be given right now, but actually, why didn't you call the police? That's illegal in Canada. So we've covered off your case scenario. And we don't necessarily need opinions from other countries.
Here, here.
We have a database of information from all our helplines that are in place. Psychiatric institutions, every hospital, health center in the Toronto area, 25 to 30 of them, has a psychiatric ward. So what do they have to say? Let's find out who Canadians are and what they want versus going internationally. That would be our next step. I agree, but Canada is its own country. Individuals who are immature don't need the freedom, contrary to the opposition, to the government. They need to be educated. We don't just give someone $100,000 and give them license to spend it. And me and my party agree that there should be no laws for the few, and that it's morally unacceptable to take life and legally unacceptable to take life, and the current practices and policies in place are doing a good job.
Here, here.
The laws, the criminal code itself, as I said, once again, the helplines and the hospitals, the fishing nets, so to speak, to catch the population, available 24/7 to anyone and everyone.
Thank you, Astrida. So I'd now like to call on the Prime Minister, Adrian, to sum up the case for the government for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Assisted suicide, physician-assisted suicide to be specific, is a very sensitive topic. As the government has stated, right now, this is happening, but it's happening in the dark corridors of hospitals, it's happening in doctors' offices, it's happening in the nursing wards, where it isn't being regulated, it isn't being controlled, and no one knows anything about it. And most importantly, it's happening without the family's consent, and it's happening without patients' consent. We believe that this needs to be regulated, it needs to be brought out into the open, it needs to be brought out into the light. It needs to have mature conversation that takes place between everyone concerned, as well as multiple healthcare professionals as we define the resolution. From there, it can be monitored. From there, it can be observed. where we can treat people and allow people to be treated in their dying moments, in their dying days or weeks or months, with humanity and respect and compassion. The same compassion we would give, for example, to the family pet, or the family cat, or the family dog. We have to respect and promote that people get to choose not only how they live, but also how they die. It is their fundamental right. As Shakespeare put it, and as the government agrees, nothing in his life became him like believing it. And we believe that is a noble goal for everyone to achieve. For all of these reasons, we beg the House to support the motion. Thank you.
So thank you to the debaters. I would like to now ask Heather to come up and adjudicate the debate for this evening. Heather?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's debate was on a very serious issue, and it was a serious debate, and it was a serious format. Normally when I do adjudication, I find it very easy to kind of assess what people say and how to then assign numbers and come up with kind of a, there's a simple formula to decide who wins. I think in this debate, because there's so much to and fro with the cross-exam, it's really hard to kind of bring it all in. If I were to basically consolidate my notes, it would have taken me 20 minutes, I think. So I think the way I'm going to approach this tonight is I'm going to just go through the chronology, do a linear adjudication of this, if no one objects to that, and just the observations I had. So I'd like to say that I think with the resolution itself, I thought it could have been a little bit meatier, non-meteor, because we've had too many of those in the last few weeks. However, it is what it was, and the Prime Minister clearly defined it. It was very straightforward. Then he went on to create an argument based on 3 main points. He organized those points very clearly. He explained what he meant. He went over the legal framework. He went over the argument that we saw in the courts in Canada on discrimination, so that applied to our country specifically. And then he argued that it would expand your freedoms and liberties. And he went through, gave an example of a U.S. hospital study about death rates, and he talked about an ethicist very briefly. He did bring up other countries, and I thought the good point that was made there was that having teams of people creates checks and balances. So that's kind of the crux of what I took away from that, is that given the 3 points that he was arguing that we need checks and balances if people are going to determine how they want to end their life, and that we should create the legal framework so people aren't doing it under the table, where they can't be regulated, where no one knows what's happening, where the patient or the family may not know what the reasons were leading up to a decision, or may not know that a decision's been made necessarily. And also there are people who, could act in desperation or won't do something because it's illegal. That came to the second point he made about choosing the manner of your own death while you're of sound mind. And I thought that was a really good stipulation. We're not talking about people who are either advanced in a disease or who have psychiatric issues. That there's a clear framework. I mean, obviously nothing's perfect. Even if it was legalized, you have that framework to go by. And that would include also minors. Minors are not included in this, right? Under the law, if you're under 18, you can't make those decisions for yourself, so we don't have to worry about minors. I think also that again, to the third point, he talked about options and choice. Now, I didn't feel that was fleshed out quite enough. I would like to know what options there are. If this is, you can have them in your own home, if you can do it without any discomfort, if you could take a longer, that wasn't totally clear to me. And then I thought that bringing up Morgentaler in this was maybe not completely appropriate. And the reason being is that decision was made on the rights of the citizen. and that trumped the non-citizen, which is the baby, and as I heard just comments in here, like I think that maybe added a little bit of confusion that the opposition jumped on. But otherwise, I thought it was a very clear argument. You know what you're talking about, you know where you can go with it. Then we had the cross-exam with Astrida. And so I think you were good. You caught him on what he thought, not on the facts. And that's good. So you nailed him on that one. I found the delay off the start was a little bit disconcerting, to be honest, as an adjudicator. When someone's given a strong argument, I want to see you come up punching. So it seemed like you were just kind of gathering your thoughts for just a few beats too long. And in a cross-exam, part of the fun in the debate is a feistiness, right? But you got him in terms of making him say, I think, and then you got him on that. So I thought that was good. And then talking about the source, I got a little bit confused, to be honest. But then I thought, again, you talked about US statistics, and Canada has a different structure. And there was really no answer to that. So, but it wasn't clear to me. I understood what you were trying to do, and I wish you'd kind of done the 1, 2, 3 punch with it and followed up and put him on the defensive a little bit more, because you were going in the right direction on that, I thought. And then we came to your argument. And I got a little bit confused with it, because we were talking about generations of suicide, and I didn't understand what that meant in the context of this debate with having physician-assisted suicide. And then the arguments that I heard were that education, the available programs will eliminate the problem, that we don't need to legalize it because we already have institutions in place. So then it became a tautological argument for the whole thing. Oh geez, I gotta regroup. I'll probably need 2 or 3 minutes. It became a little bit tautological because then you were repeating like your 2 points were death is not the answer, but it wasn't fleshed out, and that it's legally wrong. And it is legally wrong. We're trying to, you have to kind of give some reasons why. And I thought when you talked about the laws should not be able to take a life, it's actually legal. Suicide is legal in Canada, so you can take your own life. You just can't have someone help you. Then with Dean, I'll sum it up. Dean, I thought you just did a fantastic job. You came up with a zinger. You totally nailed, the argument on mental health and suicide prevention. What you did for me is you clarified the argument that Adrian presented. Adrian didn't really get into the meat of it and the details, and so I was saying, why more than one doctor? That you clarified it all, doctor, psychiatrist, and you also talked about statistics, etc. And then, and the cross-examination I thought was good. The ad hominem attacks, I wasn't a big fan of. There were only two comments on that, but the rest, I loved the feistiness, and you really went at each other. Jim, you had an onerous task. You're coming out the last guy in a debate, and you have to try and blow holes in the argument. What I think you successfully did was you demonstrated that your argument, from what I heard, was that you shouldn't have a law that doesn't protect the vulnerable. And I thought you really successfully slammed all the statistical evidence from Oregon by saying, look, they have a completely different healthcare system, and when you're looking at a bill of $1 million at your end of your life, that might entice you to, basically want to end it. So that to me made all the statistics null and void in the Oregon case. However, I felt that the government's argument, the 3-pointed argument, was not destroyed by the opposition. I thought your point was really good, and you're in a much worse position to win the debate given that. So I thought on that front it was pretty close, but I have to give it to the government. And I think it was conclusively to the government. And I think Dean, again, Jim, I thought your style was fantastic. I love the cross-exam, but I think overall, Dean, you provided clarity, good cross-exam, great rebuttals. To me, that was a full package. So next time, I will be more concise. I forgot there was a time limit. So now I guess I award the team, right? Do you come up, Prime Minister? And
best debater.
Best debater was Dean.
Yeah.
I felt. Congratulations, gentlemen.
There we go.
Oh, pictures, please.
Everybody in?
Oh, we gotta have a picture.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's do the handshake while we're doing it.
There we go.
Congratulations.
And the popular vote tonight is for the government, 11, and actually 0 for the opposition, unfortunately. So please, Adrian, if you would come up and take this award.
I don't know which one of you voted for us, but